Of course, Trump's not dead. On the other hand, how could you be certain? And how could his own White House have possibly made it look more like he was? Or make it look more like he is desperately ill, or had surgery, or is going to have surgery, or what? He has never voluntarily shut the F up for 5 consecutive days in his effing life, and yet they maximize the ways that would emphasize that he just had shut the F up. Can Trump run for a 3rd term if he's dead? What if he faked his own death for whatever reason? What's the Constitution say about that, Federalist Society? And most importantly, why are any of us complaining because we didn't see him for 2 days and didn't hear from him for 5? To start, no, it is not ghoulish nor unfeeling to talk about the possible nonviolent death of the President of the United States, especially when he and his staff seemingly did everything possible to make it look like he was dead or gravely ill or something. It is not ghoulish or unfeeling in the least, because these people are always up to something, and he has a record of lying about his health for decades, and there has never, ever been a time when he voluntarily shut the F up this long. To say nothing of the fact that at the peak of the speculation, somebody put out a fundraising email for Trump headlined, "I want to try to get to heaven." And that's the second such email with that same headline to come out in less than a week. I want to try to get to heaven. Hey, pal, don't let me stop you. Throughout this, I was convinced, and I remain convinced, that the only thing that explains the fact that it was quiet, too quiet, and explains that 3.5-hour circle jerk cabinet meeting comedy roast last week, and explains the bizarre J.V. Vance interview with USA Today about the possibility of a tragedy in which Vance succeeds Trump, you bet your ass. The only thing that explains all of that is some kind of life-jeopardizing surgery or treatment or condition that they all knew about and we still don't. There are no circumstances under which Trump voluntarily decides to just take the holiday weekend off and not say anything. Not possible. He gave an interview to the Daily Caller on Friday, unless they are lying about it. And by the way, the Daily Caller is not reliable on, facts. And in the interview, no video, no audio, a couple of photos. He went to his golf club Saturday and Sunday, nowhere near the pool photographers, let alone the reporters. No questions, no comments, only a couple of long-distance telephotos, at least one of which looks like there is a bandage, a big bandage on the left hand. No evidence he played golf, just a shot of him in a cart. And it was so bad and so unlike Trump that some key MAGA influencers reposted video of him Saturday in the same golf attire from June 28th talking to people, only he was not talking to people on Saturday. They just made it seem like that's what the video meant. They are asking the world to believe that Donald Trump chose not to talk. It's not possible. Therefore, it's something else. What could keep him quiet? Something that made the cabinet think they might not see him again. Get your praise in for dear leader before is... The self-debasement by them at that thing, the ones like Hegseth and Bondi who sit there day after day praising him for all the things he's done, and especially all the things he hasn't done but hallucinates he has, that turns out all this time to have been the short version. They could expand that endless D-list celebrity roast to 3.5 hours? Are they really planning to keep that up every week or every couple of days for 3.5 years? That idiot from the Labor Department, Lori Chavez DeRemer, the one who hung a giant North Korea-style banner with Trump's head on the outside of her building, has to tell Trump she's done that. She invites him to go see his, quote, big, beautiful face. Hey, Secretary of the Department of Slave Labor, that may be big, and that may be a face, but nobody has ever said it was beautiful. It is not that these idiots humiliated themselves praising him to his big, ugly face live on TV. TV around the world, by the way. The BBC still covers these things live. They do that humiliating praise nonsense every one of these meetings. That's why they were hired. And they have no self-respect to lose. That's why they took those jobs. It's not the fawning dear leader cult worship. That's their job. It's the 3.5-hour part. Were they perhaps not praising him, seeking long-term advancement, but instead humoring him, expecting some sort of near-term exit? Is it possible we are not all inferring too much, daydreaming, wish-fulfilling? Is it possible there is something both wrong and imminent, that it was wrong and imminent last Tuesday, and it's still wrong and imminent, now? It goes without saying we've had too many presidential assassinations and assassinations attempts. But a president dying from bad health in office is so rare that you literally have to be about 85 or older to have a clear memory of it happening in this country. FDR died in April 1945. Before that, it was Warren G. Harding in 1923. Heart attack. So unless you're 107 or so, you cannot have a vivid memory of Warren G. Harding's heart attack. Before Harding, it was Zachary Taylor in 1850 and William Henry Harrison in 1841. And Harrison and his 31-day presidency is so removed from our reality now that when remembered at all, poor President Harrison I is remembered as a punchline about why you should always remember to wear your hat when it rains. It is not ghoulish. It is not wrong to wonder what the F is going on. Half of presidential science fiction is about a serving president who is dying of illness or something inexplicable that they try to keep from the public. From President Mitchell in Dave to President Lindbergh in The Plot Against America to the unnamed president in Advise and Consent. Because it's not like Trump has spent the last month or so constantly talking about going to heaven. All right, he has. I want to try to get to heaven. Last year I came millimeters from death when that bullet pierced through my skin. My triumphant return to the White House was never supposed to happen, but I believe that God saved me for one reason, to make America great again. I wasn't supposed to beat crooked Hillary in 2016, but I did. I wasn't blah, blah, blah. But by the grace of Almighty God, I did. So now I have no other choice but to answer the call to do. Can't do it alone. You've been with me through everything when they launched a blah, 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 blah. Just because I won a historic landslide and have unleashed the golden age of America, that doesn't mean we can take our foot. Just remember that the odds are like 3-2 that until sometime in the last 10 years, he'd never heard of God. And this goes on for a lot longer, this fundraising email. And that's just the first one. As I said, I'll spare you. And it never really does, although he drops a couple of gods in there. It never really gets back to that headline. What's with that headline? Does he want his people to think he's about to die? Is there some sort of strategy here? What is exactly is the sell point of I want to try to get to heaven? I mean, Jesus suffering F. I know what we do. Let's get everybody thinking you're about to die and they'll send more money. Then there is all the involuntary evidence. A week ago, Trump hiding his right hand from cameras. Tuesday, Trump hiding his right hand again. His hand looking like they had just paved it. Somebody posted a shot of Queen Elizabeth greeting the temp they had hired as prime minister. Same effect on the hand, like gravel on the hand. 2 days before she had died. Then the bandage on the hand on Saturday. And the reminder from the website Public Notice that in 2018, they did a coronary calcium CT scan on Trump, and even his quack doctor of the time, Ronnie Jackson, who said if he ate better, Trump could live to 200. Even Ronnie Jackson acknowledged that Trump's score on the calcium test was 133. When you are confirmed to have heart disease, if your score is 100 or higher. That's 7 years ago. I'm sure the White House is not lying about the hand. All the repeated hand bruising over the last 6 months or so, all the hiding of the hand, all the obvious places where they put something in, a shunt or a needle of some sort in the hand, and it causes that kind of bruising. No. That's just from too many handshakes from too many people who just love him. It must have been a long cabinet meeting. He shook everybody's hand 35 times each. And then finally, what the hell with J.V. Vance? Why did J.V. Vance do an interview about Trump's health and his own readiness to succeed him with USA Today, which has become a go-to news site for Trump administration leaked and especially planted stories? We have video of.
Your boss is one of the oldest people to ever be sworn into office. You're one of the youngest people to ever be second in line. Are you ready to assume the role of commander-in-chief? And why should Americans trust you to lead the country?
Well, I've gotten a lot of good on-the-job training over the last 200 days, but also say that the president is in incredibly good health. He's got incredible energy. Yes, things can always happen. Yes, terrible tragedies happen. But I feel very confident the president of the United States is in good shape, is going to serve out the remainder of his term and do great things for the American people. And if, God forbid, there's a terrible tragedy, I can't think of better on-the-job training than what I've gotten over the last 200 days.
I know he didn't ask the question. But what the hell, JV? Was it a surprise? Doesn't sound like it was a surprise. Trump's been getting sicker and sicker and crazier every day for 10 years, probably 60 years. Something has accelerated, even if it's just age. And you don't answer that question with the president is fine, I don't worry about such things. Vance, you lie about everything else. You don't lie about his health? You don't lie about his health now? I mean, Vance is dumb, but he's not that dumb. MAGA is furious, of course. How dare you say Trump is sick when he's immortal? It was a holiday. It was Labor Day. He was taking time. He didn't want to. He played John Gruden, and it's just he went to you saw him in the car. There was pictures of him with his grandchildren. How dare you bring up his grandchildren? Like he ever took a holiday off from being on camera. Name me the last legal holiday when he shut the F up. Being on camera is his only proof of life to himself. This whole story, whatever it is, whatever it isn't, is Trump's own fault. That is his White House that let him do an interview, supposedly, with no video or audio. That's his White House that offered no explanation, not even a bad one. That's his campaign that put out an I want to get to heaven email in the middle of speculation that he was already dead. Oh, you hit reply all. No, this was supposed to be to God at God.com. That's his cult that sensitized this nation to the question of presidential health by making up stories about Biden. And lastly, on that subject to the media, why aren't you all asking about his health every day? Why wasn't this mentioned once on the Sunday shows? Why isn't on any of the websites a big story about this? I mean, it's a story about speculation. You did 474 stories about speculation about Biden last year. It didn't stop you that you didn't have any information. Where's the first one? Do you have any guts left, all of you? One person to step out and go, I'm going to risk my career here. Just one. Just one with another skill. I know. The odds of there being a reporter in America who has another skill, the odds of there being a reporter who would not starve if they lost their reporting job, those are pretty high. Certainly not in Washington, D.C. But what the hell are you guys doing collectively? What about all the editors? Why aren't you all asking about his health every day and his whereabouts for the last 5 days, his last week? What the hell? are the I want to try to get to heaven emails about? You are still self-flagellating over supposedly not covering Biden's health enough last year. By the way, you covered it enough. You covered it hourly. You covered it 10 times as much as you're covering the story that was headlined on Twitter, on effing Twitter. The story was headlined, Donald Trump missing. Crickets. Still, there are more stories right now about Biden's health than Trump's. All of this has been best summarized, as usual, by the wise satire of the online New York Times PitchBot account. President Trump, the anonymous author posted Saturday, has not been seen for 3 days, raising fresh questions about Biden's health. Speaking of health, Rudy Giuliani, auto accident yesterday, rear-ended. Thoughts and thoughts. From the Make America Sick Again files, and that's, of course, the acronym MASA, they are this close to banning COVID vaccines, or trying to. Already, you will not be able to get the COVID vaccine in the red states, and a lot of blue ones, even with a prescription. They've so confused this that some pharmacy chains will not touch the COVID vaccine. All because the far right cannot ever possibly acknowledge that government has to intervene sometimes. Illinois is already looking at leading a consortium of blue states willing to combine resources to cobble together their own ad hoc vaccine program. The Wall Street Journal had a story, terribly ironic one. Remember to bookmark this to save, especially if COVID rages in the red states this winter, or anything else does. As Trump, quote, sat with top donors at his New Jersey golf club last month, he made a private admission. He believed the coronavirus vaccine was one of the biggest accomplishments of his presidency, but he couldn't bask in it. Bask. Trump told donors who were paying $1 million to be there that he wished he could talk more about Operation Warp Speed, the government program he initiated that helped expedite the development of the vaccine, attendees said. The guests included Pfizer's CEO Albert Bourla, whose company developed one of the first COVID-19 vaccines, end quote. As an aside, hi, I'm the CEO of Pfizer. I'm sitting here donating $1 million to this psycho turd trying to kill my customers instead of taking credit for helping me save my customers. My name is Elmer J. Fudd Bourla, billionaire. I own a mansion and a yacht. Bottom line here is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to have to be removed from the government, hell, from the country. As with Trump, it's us or him. A nice op-ed by Bernie Sanders, but getting Robert Kennedy to resign is not going to happen. He needs to be chased out of the country. Same for Kristi Noem. It's hard to believe that anybody that disconnected from reality for whatever reason is actually in charge of anything. Something is deeply, deeply wrong with Kristi Noem. I thought she had to have been referring to the wildfires or Trump's delusion that he turned the water on But no, when she went on Meet the Press yesterday and said, quote, L.A. wouldn't be standing today if President Trump hadn't taken action then. That city would have burned down if left to the devices of the mayor and the governor of that state. When she said that, Kristi Noem was in fact referring to Trump's usurpation of control of the California National Guard. She actually means the militarization, where they then did nothing. Like in D.C., where the troops are mulching. Not marching, just mulching. To update an old baseball joke, MRIs of Kristi Noem's head showed nothing. Okay, Wednesday will be the next Trumpstein story. Congressman Ro Khanna, a Democrat, and Thomas Massie, a Republican, unless Trump recovers, will hold a joint news conference. And as Kana explained yesterday, what will be explosive in the September 3 press conference that both of us are having with 10 Epstein victims, many who have never spoken out before, they're going to be on the steps of the Capitol. They will be telling their story, and they will be saying clearly to the American public that they want the release of the Epstein files for full closure on this matter. Congressman, I hope you have 175,000 American flags there to really sell it to the right-wing conspiracy theorists, because they're the ones who are going to keep the story alive. Can't just be you and me and George Conway. What's amazing is James Comer's committee subpoenaed anything left that the Epstein estate might have, that he might have signed about his bad prosecution by Alex Acosta in Florida, and they're getting an interview with Alex Acosta, and they are getting the birthday book. The Epstein estate is providing this group, this committee, the Epstein birthday book, the one the White House says doesn't exist or doesn't have Trump's letter in it or whatever, plus unreported other documents we don't know about. Hey, maybe that's what made Trump go virtually MIA. And your humorous relief, well, your relief anyway, from Verisight and G. Elliott Morris at Strength in Numbers. The problem here is the public is schizophrenic on Trump and crime. Associated Press NORC poll out this week, NORC, finding that 65% of Americans say crime in the U.S. generally is a big problem, and 81% agree when they're asked specifically about crime in large cities. When asked, is it a problem in your community, only 20% say it's a big problem. Use of the military, 55% say that is acceptable, 37% say no. Use of the military to take control of the local police departments, it's reversed. 55% say it's unacceptable. 32% say yes. So you can, according to the American public opinion right now, you can send the military into the big cities, but they can only mulch. Trump total approval is 15 underwater. Given a choice A or B, pathway to legal status or deporting most unauthorized immigrants, 60% favor the pathway. So where's the humorous relief I promised? The congressional generic ballot from Verisight for the midterms. Democrats, 49. Republicans, 41, which is about what would be needed at this point in history to statistically flip the House. Of course, you have to have elections to do that. Also of interest here, it's an all-new edition of Countdown. Worst is pretty good, and yes, a veteran fascist propagandist has gotten the year that 9/11 happened wrong. Another star baseball pitcher will have to get Tommy John surgery, so baseball wants to change the rules to decrease Tommy John surgeries, never realizing that there should be more Tommy John surgeries. And I'll explain all that. But more importantly, I wanted to mention briefly what might be the greatest compliment I have ever heard made to a teacher, to a school teacher. This is 61 years ago now, 1964. Maybe this has been told publicly. I don't know. Maybe there's been some greater compliment to a teacher. I have to imagine that's the case, but I've never heard of one. The students in this teacher's first grade class so loved her, and the parents so loved her and what she did for their kids, that when talk began to circulate in the school that she might be switching to teaching second grade the next fall, the next school year, all the kids in her class and all the parents asked if their first grade class could go with her to the second grade, intact. Mrs. Marcine Weiner taught the same, 25 or so kids in first grade and then taught the same 25 again in second grade. How about good reviews? Actually, in the second grade, though, it was 26 kids. About a month into the school year of 1964-65, they decided that the kid in the first grade who had taken home the 300-page math workbook one weekend and finished the whole thing because he thought it was fun, he was probably just going to be spinning his wheels the rest of the year, and maybe they should put him in the second grade. Immediately. Literally, in September, send a bunch of kids down from that second grade classroom at the end of the hallway and help him just pick up his desk and move it, the whole desk with all his stuff in the desk, and move it from the first grade classroom and plunk it into a second grade classroom. There are no reports as to whether or not there was a party in the first grade classroom after the kid left. But we know, they said at the time, exactly who of our teachers in the second grade can handle him. Mrs. Weiner and her group of 25 incumbents. Mrs. Weiner's classroom, of course, was at the Sugar Pond Public School in Hastings-on-Hudson, New York. And she handled it completely perfectly. I was a fish out of water in that classroom for about 20, 25 minutes. And she and my new classmates made me feel right at home. Imagine being given this kid who was deemed to be too, whatever, that he had to be moved up a grade during the school year and somehow making that work. And that's when I stopped being class of 1976 and became class of 1975. So the 50th reunion is this year. In fact, it's this month. And even though I graduated elsewhere, I'll be going to this one. There will be more than a touch of sadness to this reunion, though. Over the weekend, my friend Pat Sinatra told me she had gotten the news that Mrs. Weiner had died on Friday, just before the school year began. 98 years old. I'd heard from her over the years many times, notes. I even saw her once or twice before she moved to the Midwest. Pat stayed in touch with her and said she asked about me a few times recently, and Pat told Mrs. Weiner I was causing trouble as usual, to which Mrs. Weiner enthusiastically answered, "Good!" It is a remarkable thing that a bunch of rapidly aging men and women, aged 66 to 68, all loved the same person for literally 62 of their years. I guess there isn't much more to ask for from life than that. First and second grade classes start at Sugar Pond tomorrow. I hope somebody there does something in Mrs. Weiner's memory, especially the part about how she was so good in caring that all the kids and the parents asked for another year of her gentle and patient and unfailingly happy teaching. I'm just sorry we couldn't have gotten a third year of it, starting about now.
George Carlin, pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. This is the best news show ever. I told that to one of your producers, and I want you to know that. I've seen them all, and it's just, especially the first 35 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
It's just unparalleled.
I got bad news. Between you and I, we got 6 minutes to completely screw that into the ground.
Okay,
right?
That's good.
Still ahead on this all-new edition of Countdown, Sports Ball Center, and things I promised not to tell merge yet again. Baseball and pitchers and injuries as the baseball pennant races really begin, and the assumption that more pitchers than ever are getting hurt, and how it's terrible they all have to have Tommy John surgery. That whole line of thinking is backwards. Tommy John surgery and other operations save nearly all the pitchers for whom, just 50 years ago, would have seen their careers ended if they got any of the injuries. It's a lifesaver. It's a career saver. I'll tell you the sagas of 3 young pitching prospects of the 1960s, before there were such surgeries. One was named Tom Seaver, another was named Gary Lynn Nolan, and the third one was named Lynn Nolan Ryan. Plus, if baseball really thinks fewer pitching surgeries are an absolute must, I have the solution. I guarantee it will work. I guarantee near 100% success. 2 small rule changes, and the number of serious pitching injuries will drop to almost none. Next in Sports Ball Center. First, believe it or not, There's still more new idiots to talk about. The roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's other worst persons in the world. LeBron's worse? Melania, the first immigrant of the United States, mother of a first-generation American citizen. Unless hubby gets away with destroying birthright citizenship. Melania and Mark Guiducci, the new editor of Vanity Fair magazine, who I mentioned last week in a different context. Guiducci reportedly tried to get the FLOTUS on the cover of Vanity Fair, to which the staff of the magazine threatened to walk out because he would be mainstreaming and normalizing fascism. They refused to work if he did not abandon efforts to put Melania Trump on the cover of Vanity Fair. Apparently, it's been abandoned. But the real interesting story here is that that whole idea that they would walk out, that's one anti-Melania leak, which almost simultaneously was followed by a pro-Melania leak, presumably from the Melania Trump press staff, to the New York Post, of course, the pro-Trump House organ, if you will forgive the use of that term. The quote from the unnamed source, "She doesn't have time to be sitting in a photo shoot. Her priorities as First Lady are far more important. These people don't deserve her anyway." Unquote. Yeah, Melania Trump would never do that, would never bother to be on the cover of Vanity Fair magazine. She was on the cover of Vanity Fair magazine in February of 2017. No, of course not. She'd never do that. She did it already. She used to be a model. You never know when she might have to go back to it. What a bunch of crap. By the way, if this editor, Guiducci, and Vanity Fair, if they sound familiar, they were on the list last time as the rumored location of the comeback of you-know-who, my ex, or as the Daily Beast headline called her, RFK Jr.'s digital lover. Oh well, Olivia. The runner-up, worser, Candace Owens again. After the school shooting in Minnesota, I didn't see this at the time. Quote, in a tweet or something, "The government is behind this. Each shooting is more traumatizing than the last because the goal is to scare us into compliance. It is the tried and true strategy of 9/11 and the Manson murders, both CIA operations. Do not ever agree to hand over your Second Amendment rights." So, among other things, you're suggesting here that Donald Trump was behind the shooting in Minnesota? Well, we agree on that. Although this is such an old conspiracy theory, I'm really surprised even somebody as stupid as Candace Owens is pushing this. Did she have Stephen A. Smith on to comment on it? If you want a good conspiracy theory to push, Candy Brain, maybe the government is behind school shootings. But let me translate that into, reality. Maybe Republicans take no action to stop school shootings because they depend on political contributions from those in the child murdering business. And maybe the Republicans take no action to stop school shootings to try to encourage schools to buy guns or hire armed guards, and to encourage parents to buy guns because more guns means more cash for the people in the child murdering business. And maybe the Republicans take no action to stop school shootings to make homeschooling even more viable, more attractive. See, you have to be a certain age to remember this, but homeschooling used to be called truancy. You aren't a teacher, you don't have the time, you don't know one topic that you're teaching, let alone 5 different ones, but you're going to teach your kids at home with all the distractions of being at home for 12 years. And somehow you're going to let them be exposed to other ideas and viewpoints and just learn to behave among other people, even if they ultimately reject all those ideas and viewpoints and people and they accept yours. You're going to do all of that? Homeschooling is one of the reasons America gets dumber every year. Not every homeschooled kid is a moron, but a vast majority of them have absolutely no perspective on the world outside and couldn't tell you if there's another 1,000 people in the world or 7 billion. Maybe try one of those conspiracies, Candy. Also, how's the Macron suit going? But our winner, the worst, speaking of conspiracy theory nut jobs, Tucker Carlson. How many times can you destroy your own career? I mean, I've been accused of doing it to my own career a couple times, but even I, at my supposed worst, would be a piker, an amateur, compared to this asshole. Tucker Carlson, fired by CNN, fired by MSNBC, fired by Fox, rehired by Fox, given the 8 p.m. show on Fox, and then fired again by Fox, then hired and essentially fired by Elon Musk. How do you get fired by Elon Musk if you're crazy? And now fired even from the fringes of American media and the conspiracy theory section of that, with a conspiracy theory that just doesn't add up, even among conspiracy theorists. And when I say doesn't add up, I mean this literally. Tucker Carlson has moved into 9/11 trutherism grifting, a little late in the field, and he's got one small problem: math. I mean, listen to this. With a video attached to it, for nearly 25 years, the true story on 9/11 has been withheld from the American people. Why? We decided to find out for ourselves. Who's this we? Is the other person in the room with you? Get all 5 episodes of our documentary series at tuckercarlson.com on September 11th. And the official story on 9/11 is a complete lie, and there's a picture of bin Laden. But wait, for nearly 25 years? 25? It's 2025 now. I hate to break this to you, Tucker, but 9/11 was 9/11/2001. So let me see, 2025 minus 2001 equals 25? No, it doesn't equal 25. It equals 24. So if we're not yet at the anniversary of 9/11, that means 9/11 is not nearly 25 years ago. It's nearly 24 years ago. Unless you've gotten the year wrong, Tucker, and you think 9/11 took place in 2000. Seems like getting the year wrong is a bad start for your 9/11 truther bullshit. I mean, nearly 25 years ago, if that's true, you could say nearly 50 years ago or nearly 100 years ago. Those are just as inaccurate. Tucker, he must have hit a math wall. Carlson, today's other worst person in the world!
This is Sports Center. Wait, check that. Not anymore. This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
And it's Sports Ball Center time, combined with things I promised not to tell, our number one story on the countdown. And this starts with a man you may or may not have heard of, even if you are a baseball fan. His name is Randy Rodriguez. He is a pitcher with the San Francisco Giants. On Friday, he turns 26 years old, and I don't know what he'll be doing on Friday for his birthday, but one thing we know he will not be doing is pitching. It has been quite a 1-month period for Randy Rodriguez. About a month ago, maybe more like 2, he was a middle relief pitcher, a setup man for the Giants, and he was so good at it this season. He came into his own that he became an all-star. And he made it to the All-Star team and pitched in the All-Star game. And during the All-Star game, everybody said this is the soon-to-be closer, the number 1 relief pitcher of the San Francisco Giants. And then Randy Rodriguez did not pitch well in that All-Star game. And when the season resumed in the middle of July, he didn't pitch well for the San Francisco Giants. And as the weeks went by, the Giants still traded the man above him in their depth chart, their closer, and they traded the man below him in their depth chart, their setup man, Rodgers. They traded them both because they had all-star Randy Rodriguez to become the closer, and then he started to get the elbow pain, and then it became intolerable, and then they put him on the injured list, and then they said he had a right elbow sprain, and then they sent him for an MRI, and they determined that his ulnar collateral ligament was torn. Surgery has been recommended. He is to get Tommy John surgery. They may futz around with it, but eventually it will happen. He will be out for all of this year, certainly, no matter whether he has the surgery or not, and probably all or most of next. And the cry goes up again in every corner of baseball and sports. These Tommy John surgeries are ruining baseball. We have to have fewer of them. By 2023, more than a third, 35% of all active pitchers in Major League Baseball had Tommy John surgery. That's declined slightly in the 2 years since, but not a lot. We have to change the rules somehow. We have to make sure pitchers don't get Tommy John surgery. It's ruining the game. This is totally backwards. Tommy John surgery has been the greatest thing for pitchers and, in fact, for baseball, other than free agency and a lot of television exposure and some superstar players who seem to have been unique to the half century. Tommy John surgery and related surgeries on pitchers' arms and shoulders and elbows and sternums have been the greatest thing to happen to baseball, and certainly to pitchers, since I was a child. It saves guys like Randy Rodriguez, and ultimately it saves baseball because a star pitcher who's injured has a chance of coming back. Now, the surgery happens because the injury happens, but the injuries have always happened. The surgery happens because now we know what the injuries are, because the MRI and other devices allow us to see inside the human body without cutting it up for what used to be referred to as exploratory surgery. Have you ever been in a doctor's office where the guy said, "I'm not sure what's wrong with you, but I want to do exploratory surgery to find out"? I had a guy say that to me about my shoulder about 2007. I walked out of the room. I don't even think I paid him. You're going to open me up rather than just look at the pictures you just took of my shoulder? And in the old days, that's all they had. Tommy John surgery is named for the first guy who underwent it, who had a replacement ligament put into his elbow, a transplant. His name was Tommy John. I know him very well, or knew him very well in any event, and he was simply out of business at the age of 31. His ulnar collateral ligament had torn. They found this out by going to a doctor named Frank Jobe in Los Angeles, and he put John in a certain position with his throwing arm, his left hand, up in the air, and he said, "Now push your arm forward. Does that hurt?" And he said, "A little." "Now let me push the arm back, and if it hurts, then we know that the ligament is actually torn." And he pushed the arm back, and the sound I will not recreate for you here, but apparently it was like, "Ah!" only much, much louder and much, much longer. And Tommy John said, "What do we do about this?" And Dr. Jobe, who spoke like this, said, "You retire. There's nothing to do for it." And Tommy John, who has a few holes in his intelligence, but otherwise is a really bright guy, said, "I'm 31 years old. This is how I make my money. I have no other skills, and you're telling me I'm done. There's nothing medical science can do to help me. Nothing. You can't put a new ligament in there?" No. There's just on the radio this morning as I was driving to your clinic, there's been another heart transplant. You're telling me you can't put how complex is a heart compared to the ligament that's torn in my elbow that's causing me this pain when I throw the baseball? How complex? Oh, probably about 1,000,000 times. And you can't transplant a new one? Transplant a ligament into your elbow to replace the torn one? Well, I never thought of that. Well, you can see where it's gone from there. Even then, they couldn't be sure what they would find when they operated, but at least that exploratory surgery had some clinical basis to it. "Doctor, it hurts when I do this. Don't do that. Well, we can operate now." And they did it, and it was successful. And it wasn't initially a universal cure for any of the pitcher's problems, and it still isn't. The second man to get Tommy John surgery was a great fella named Brent Strom, and it didn't work for him. He might have been the first, and then it would be Brent Strom surgery. It might have worked, and it might have been Brent Strom surgery, but instead, he had to retire and became a pitching coach and is still doing that today. In any event, Tommy John surgeries save guys like Randy Rodriguez and baseball. The surgery happens because the injury happens because guys are throwing overhand, which used to be illegal in baseball because it is not a natural use of your arm. Do it long enough and it's going to hurt. It's going to at least hurt. Do it long enough and you'll tear something. You will break something. It used to be illegal to throw overhand in baseball. It was automatically a ball, and if you did it too often, they threw you out of the game. They changed those rules in the 1870s because they simply couldn't stop pitchers from throwing overhand because you could throw the ball harder, you could curve the ball if you threw it overhand, and most importantly, you had more control of where it was going to go and how you could elude the batter. It became a motivating factor in a pitcher's success and thus the amount of money he made doing baseball. And the rule against overhand throwing was eliminated 150 odd years ago. The injury occurs because guys throw too hard. They throw too hard because a guy throwing 100 miles an hour is going to be making 20% more than a guy throwing 95 miles an hour in most cases. Never mind, used to be 90 miles an hour got you the top salary for a pitcher in baseball. 90 miles an hour might get you a job pitching for Columbus, and not Columbus, Ohio, Columbus, Georgia. They throw too often. Pitchers used to warm up before games from a flat surface, not from a mound. Yes, they pitched more often in games, but a warm-up consisted of 20 or 30 or however many pitches that were essentially hard catch. Now they throw games essentially in the bullpen before they throw a game on the mound. And lastly, of course, throwing too many breaking balls, twisting the wrist, the elbow, the fingers. Imagine going to your door and grabbing your handle there or your doorknob, particularly an old doorknob, and twisting it to open the door. But do it every 20 seconds. Tell me how many minutes go by before you begin to feel like you've torn something in your elbow or your shoulder. That is how to be a major league pitcher. Only you have to do it while moving your arm with such force that it produces a speed on that doorknob of 95, 96, or 97 miles an hour. In other words, what you do, which will cause you in less than an hour to go, ow, that really hurts. Okay? These guys do, only at higher speeds and more often. So some of the ideas that are floating around and resurface every time somebody like Randy Rodriguez gets hurt. Oh, he was a promising prospect, and now he's going to have to go through maybe a year and a half in which he'll still get paid and he'll recuperate, and his arm, in fact, might be stronger than it was. The odds now are something like 9 out of 10 that the arm will actually be able to throw the ball faster when he comes back. Terrible. We're crucifying these guys, and kids get these surgeries at 16. So in other words, a baseball player or would-be baseball player whose career dreams were dashed as a teenager can now continue to pursue them because of these surgeries. The ideas to eliminate or decrease the number of Tommy John and other related surgeries on pitchers include, and I'm not making any of this up, from the commissioner's office, this story leaked last year, putting a limit on how many pitchers a team can use in a season. Like, you can only use 20 pitchers. Sorry, you're out of pitchers. You're going to have to use, your catcher is going to have to throw, and we know how well that works if you've ever watched a baseball game in which a catcher comes out and throws 41 miles an hour. Two hitters who can then hold their swing back half a second and hit the ball 750 feet. That's one. Now, the idea of putting a limit on how many pitchers a team can use in a season is like saying, okay, we're going to limit the number of beds in this hospital, and therefore there'll be fewer sick people. Here's a good one. I believe this comes from baseball commissioner Rob Manfred, who we don't know if he's ever actually been to a Major League Baseball game. We know he does not enjoy baseball particularly, and certainly, without question, does not understand anything that happens on the field. This was apparently from him or his office. Every starting pitcher must throw 6 innings. You can't come out of the game. You can't be voluntarily taken out of the game, period. I don't care if he's dead. He has to pitch 6 innings. Actually, there would be certain ways out. But the idea would be no longer to incentivize throwing as hard as you can, but incentivizing pitching 6 innings, even though the teams would still pay pitchers based on how hard they threw and how many strikeouts they got, and how effective they were over, say, a period of 4 innings or 5 innings. No, make them throw the 6th inning. And by the way, the whole thing of pitchers coming out after 5 innings, that's not about injuries. It used to be. It used to be a thing called pitch count. It's now more about the fact that the resources available to hitters, combined with the practical experience of facing an individual pitcher in a game, means that if you batted against a pitcher twice, the 3rd time you come up against him, your ability to know what his pitches may be, where they may appear, how they may try to deceive you, what they look like coming out of his hand, and little ticks and gestures and tips, as they say, may be accompanying each individual kind of pitch, should be enough for you to send his next pitch to Mars. Pitchers don't face hitters for a 3rd time, not because they've already thrown 100 pitches in a game, but because they've thrown 9, 10, 11 pitches to an individual batter, and on pitch number 12 to an individual batter. Kaboom! That's why they come out. Maybe you want to eliminate videotape and digital tape and reviewing of the batters at bats during a game. Maybe you want to stop that. That would be much better than must pitch 6 innings. Again, force them to pitch 6 innings and they'll throw slower. They'll do less damage to their arm while you pay them more the faster they throw. There are rules changes in baseball that you could implement that would, in fact, reduce Tommy John and other surgeries to almost 0. They are draconian. They make very little sense. They make slightly more sense than forcing pitchers to pitch longer when the problem is that pitching longer hurts them more, which makes no sense whatsoever, or somehow branding Tommy John surgery as this great evil. They are draconian, but I guarantee they will work in whole or in part. I'll list them in a minute. But I wanted to tell a story of 3 pitchers from my childhood and what happened to them, and how the thing has changed in the ensuing now nearly 60 years. There was a fellow named Gary Nolan. He was a pitcher with the Cincinnati Reds in 1967, a rookie who was still 18 years old when he unexpectedly made the rotation of the Cincinnati Reds in 1967. That year, at the age of 18, he threw 227 innings, which would be more than anybody is likely to throw this season in baseball. He struck out 206 batters. He won 14 games and lost 8 for the Reds and was considered the young, flame-throwing ace, the star young pitcher, the teenaged phenom. Meanwhile, in the minor leagues was a pitcher who had appeared briefly for the New York Mets the year before. His name was Nolan Ryan. In fact, his name is Lynn Nolan Ryan, and Gary Nolan's middle name was Lynn, so it was Gary Lynn Nolan and Lynn Nolan Ryan. In the minors, Nolan Ryan, who had pitched once or twice for the Mets in 1966, he barely pitched at all in 1967. The Mets brought him up in September just to look around and to see what was going on and to have some tutelage from veteran pitchers and to get used again to the major leagues. He was 20 years old. In 1968, he suffered a series of blisters on his fingers, so he couldn't pitch because his hand hurt too much and there'd be blood during the game. They had him walking around with his fingers in cups of tea during the season, and then they switched it to pickle brine. He wound up throwing only 134 innings in 1968, only 89 in 1969. In fact, Nolan Ryan was 25 years old before he pitched as many innings in one season as Gary Nolan had at the age of 18. So Gary Nolan was abusing his arm with this overhand throwing and not so good mechanical delivery at 18, and Nolan Ryan didn't get to that workload until he was 25. Nolan Ryan pitched until he was 46 years old. Gary Nolan, shoulder and elbow woes the next year. In 1968, they left him in Florida when the season began. They left him in Florida so he could work out under the warm sun. Today, you get Tommy John surgery or other forms of rehabilitative surgery or just rehabilitation on an injured shoulder that does not require surgery or elbow. In 1968, the state-of-the-art solution for Gary Nolan was, don't send him to Cincinnati where it's cold. Have him warm up in Florida for a while. Well, it was 2 full seasons before he was able to take his turn regularly in the Reds rotation. Again, in 1970, he pitched for 3 years. He was great, not quite the pitcher he was before, and he had a lot of pain. Then he missed almost all of 1973 when he couldn't lift his arm over his head, and all of 1974. He came back again. He had 2 more great years. He hurt that arm, or maybe the shoulder, again in 1977 at the age of 29, and he never pitched in Major League Baseball again. He was done at 29. The workload was too much, and there was nothing to do for him. Even though Tommy John surgery had been successfully implemented 3 years earlier, they didn't know what was wrong with him. I think it was the shoulder. It was put down, as all injuries to pitchers were in those days, to a sore arm. You were encouraged to go to Florida and keep pitching through the pain, and hopefully things would get better. Remarkably, in many cases, things either got better or a pitcher's pain tolerance grew so much that they were able to pitch through it. But usually by the time of 29, you were done, and Gary Nolan was done. The third pitcher from my youth was named Tom Seaver. In 1967, he was 22. He had a different kind of pitching delivery than everybody else. He used, basically, his ass. He pitched with his lower body, which was remarkably sturdy. Let's put it that way, sturdy. He was low to the ground as he released the ball, and he had what was called a drop and drive delivery, originated by Christy Mathewson, the great Giants pitcher of the very early 20th century, perfected by Bob Feller, and then re-perfected by Seaver. Seaver pitched 251 innings in 1967. He won 16 games. He was Rookie of the Year, and he threw at least 215 innings every year until he was 35. He never had a serious arm injury. He had buttocks injuries. His delivery was perfect, and he was something of a physical oddity. And what was the whole outcome of this? What lesson did Tom Seaver take away from his success and his longevity? And he pitched until 1986 and tried to come back in 1987. What was his takeaway? That he and the other great pitchers of his era who lasted simply prepared better than the others and were more diligent. And Gary Nolan just did something wrong in the way he pitched. That it wasn't physical, that it wasn't overhand pitching, that the freaks in this equation were not Tom Seaver and Ferguson Jenkins and other pitchers of the time, but the freaks were the guys who didn't succeed. And I took the list of the other pitchers to Tom Seaver from the 1967 Mets, the team with which he broke in, and I asked him about each of them and what happened. And he remembered many of them. And I said, what about Bob Hendley? Oh, yeah, he had a sore arm. He was 28 in 1967. Dick Selma. Oh, he was the harder. I threw much harder than I did. What happened to him? Sore arm. He pitched through it. He lasted a while, but he had a sore arm. How about Bill Dennehy? You're on his rookie card. It's the Bill Dennehy rookie card featuring Tom Seaver on the side there. Yeah, well, he threw harder than I did, too. What happened to him? Sore arm. Dennis Bennett, what happened to him? Sore arm after a car crash. He hurt his leg and he came back and he was pitching different. Les Rohr, number 2 pick in the draft one year. Yeah, sore arm. Don Shaw, their left-handed relief pitcher, was 23 in 1970. He had a sore arm. How about Chuck Estrada, great pitcher of the Baltimore Orioles of the 1960s? What happened to him? Oh, he opened the season with us. Then his sore arm came back. How about Nick Wilhite, the left-hander who they got from the Dodgers? Oh, yeah, sore arm. Billy Wynn, traded to the White Sox for Tommy Agee that winter. Oh, I think he had a sore arm. Alan Schmelz, great pitcher, overhand fastball pitcher from California. Oh, man, he was a killer. I used to pitch against him in the semi-pro leagues, and boy, could he throw that ball hard. I said, what happened to him? Got into a couple of games, then he had a sore arm. Is it Jerry Hinsley? Sore arm. Ralph Terry, who finished up as his last season. Well, yeah, he was a great pitcher with the Yankees, then he had a sore arm. How old was Ralph Terry when he finished up with you guys? I don't know. He was 31. Everybody else got sore arms. I said, how about some of the other great Mets pitchers of the 1960s? The great pitching prospect, Dennis Musgraves. I never heard of him. Said he got a bigger signing bonus than you did. Came up through a couple of great games in 1965, and Seaver now said, sore arm. I went, yeah. Dick Rustick threw a shutout in his first game. I think maybe even his first 2 games. Sore arm. The surgery that saved the equivalent of all of those guys is Tommy John surgery and the various different surgeries done on other parts of the arm and shoulder. The surgery became routine once the MRI replaced the X-ray as the only visuals of the interior of the body. It is the solution. It is not the problem. Previously, if a pitcher had a sore arm, you just sent him someplace warm and told him to pitch through the pain. Steve Barber. At age 26, Steve Barber of the Baltimore Orioles was so good that every time he took the mound, they said, he's going to throw a no-hitter. One day he threw a no-hitter, but he was so wild that he lost the game. He gave up runs without giving up a hit. 26, it looked like he was on his way to the Hall of Fame. Sore arm finished for the season. 1966. Starting in 1967, the future Hall of Famer Steve Barber pitched for 7 teams in the next 8 years, kept getting traded or released. Pitchers were fungible. The investment in them was negligible. We believe, baseball historians do, that the most money Steve Barber was ever paid in a season was $37,500 by the Yankees in 1968. By the way, that was an awful lot of money for a Major League Baseball player, particularly a pitcher, in 1968. And what would happen if you broke Steve Barber and there was no surgery to repair him? Well, you were out $37 million. Those were the Yankees, who were owned then by the CBS television network. Zach Wheeler of the Philadelphia Phillies is paid $42 million a year to pitch. He's not pitching at the moment either, and he even avoided Tommy John surgery, which he's already had. This time it's thoracic outlet surgery to correct the problem in his upper extremities, meaning his arm and his shoulder. Thoracic outlet surgery to correct blood clots. He might not even be able to pitch next year. It's a very, very serious thing. We don't have Tommy John surgery for thoracic outlet syndrome. There's surgery, but who knows how well he'll recover. You don't throw out $42 million. Maybe you throw out $37,500 or let it turn into an asset worth half that. But that's why there's Tommy John surgery. And that's why baseball will always have pitchers who get injured from throwing too hard or curving the ball too much. But if you want to eliminate the 20 to 40 Tommy John surgeries a year, as I said, I have the solution. It's very simple. It's 2 rules changes. Just 2. They'll never do it. The new rules are: 1, any pitch that registers 100 miles an hour on the radar gun is a ball. I don't care what it does. I don't care what the batter did with it. It's a ball. If you throw 3 in a game, you're ejected from the game. If you throw in triple digits 3 times in one game, you're thrown out of the game. None of this, you have to pitch 6. We teach pitchers how to regulate their own and to stretch out and to pitch only as the old-fashioned pitchers did, to save something for the last inning. Don't throw as hard as you can every time out. No. They won't do it voluntarily. They know it's costing them success and money and fame. All these things are dependent on throwing the ball as hard as they can with as much energy and exertion as they possibly can manage until their arm falls off, which it does. Well, now, of course, what happens if all the good pitchers are getting thrown out for throwing the ball 100 miles an hour, which you're paying them to do? Well, you balance it out. Any ball hit 100 miles an hour by a batter, their exit velo, their exit velocity, that's automatically an out. So you're going to encourage hitters then to just meet the ball and try to dunk one over the second baseman's head for a single rather than trying to hit 70 home runs in a season. Now, there's one thing these two rules have in common. They're stupid. They would destroy the game that I don't particularly enjoy that much anymore, but the fans love and pay exorbitant ticket prices to go see and watch on TV, although realistically about a tenth of them are watching the big games, as many as watched in the year 1980. For some reason, the postseason in baseball is not interesting to almost anybody anymore unless it's their team involved, but that's a different subject. It is related to this whole subject of how the pitchers throw and how the hitters hit, but I'll leave it for another time because that will take another 45 minutes of your time, and then I'll say, and that's my preface. Let me go into further depth. But the idea of punishing a pitcher for throwing hard is not going to work. It didn't work in 1968. It didn't work in 1893. It didn't work in 1870. That's why they had to make overhand pitching legal, because the pitchers knew what worked and what didn't. The pitchers knew what got the hitters out, and it wasn't just finesse. Yes, you could be successful by mixing up fast fastballs and fastballs that only looked fast, off-speed pitches, curveballs, a variety of the mental game, the Greg Maddux game. You know why it's called the Greg Maddux game? Because he was the only one who succeeded at it in the last 50 years. It's Greg Maddux. He was doing something totally different. Tommy John surgery, which baseball is trying to eliminate and would have to do, literally, would have to do something stupid like I just suggested. Call every pitch over 100 miles an hour a ball, or worse yet, a walk. Eject pitchers who throw 100 miles an hour. Punish hitters who hit the ball more than 100 miles an hour. Stupid things, exactly the opposite of what the fans want to see. Baseball could do that. Or it could just say, yeah, these surgeries are in fact a gift from the gods. Poor Randy Rodriguez turns 26. The poor guy. He's going to miss at least a year, maybe the year, chronologically, the best year of his career. It's going to be spent recovering from surgery and having to watch his team go on without him. And then, in 2027, he'll be good as new. What would Steve Barber have given for that? What would Gary Nolan have given for that? And they want to eliminate Tommy John surgery. I've done all the damage I can do here. No surgery will help you now. Thank you for listening. Most of our countdown music was arranged, produced, and performed by Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel, our musical directors of Countdown. It was produced by TKO Brothers. Mr. Ray was on the guitars, bass, and drums. Mr. Chanel handled orchestration and keyboards. Our satirical and pithy musical comments are by the best baseball stadium organist ever, Nancy Faust. The Olbermann theme from ESPN2, written by Mitch Warren Davis, courtesy of ESPN Inc., is the sports music that you just heard 20-odd minutes ago. Other music arranged and performed by the group No Horns Allowed, and my announcer today was my late friend and hero, George Carlin. Everything else was, as always, my fault. That's Countdown for today, day 225 of America held hostage again. And just 1,247 days until the scheduled end of his lame duck, lame-brained term, unless he is removed sooner by MAGA or Jeffrey Epstein or the pavement on his hand or because the body double doesn't show up for work tomorrow. The next scheduled countdown is Thursday. Until then, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck. What'd you think of that one, Stevie? Was that a good show? Was I any good? Did you like the baseball part? What do you think? You've had enough surgeries. Do you need Tommy John surgery too? Well, you only have the 3 bad legs. What? I know, I went too long. I shouldn't ad lib. I'm much better when I pre-write everything. Me from notes is, well, you better have an hour. You're right. And instead I could be talking to you guys. What?